All right, so tonight we're gonna make a easy French apple tart. To get started, you can either make your own puff pastry. I don't, because I don't know how. It's not really worth the time when you can buy it from the store. So I've got one package of puff pastry. I think we're only gonna need one of the sheets. We'll move these apples to the side for now. But what you want to do with this puff pastry once you've let it defrost, we bought it today. I just kept it in the fridge, and then about 10-15 minutes ago took it out, got it to kind of room temperature. But what's going to end up happening is you want to kind of flour the area that you're going to be using. Just that way it won't stick when you're trying to roll this out to be able to fit this pan behind me. So as you can see, very much so room temperature. Just gonna slide it over here. And we're kind of just looking for the size of like 10 by 14 maybe. Doesn't have to be exact. The good part about this is that because it is easy, you can, use less or more of the ingredients. So, I'm gonna make this one with one puff pastry sheet, and we'll see how many apples it takes. And then we also want to make sure we're not breaking it, and then kind of making sure it's even. Now we're getting a little sticky down here. That's just what happens when it comes to room temperature. So I'm gonna actually kind of flip it and just continue to do that. This is the wrong day to wear black. Then I'll just kind of see, is it gonna fit in the spot where I need it to? Carefully pull it over here. And that's about, like I said, it's not gonna fit this full pan, but gets the job done. It's gonna be a rustic French apple tart. All right, so we'll put this in the fridge while I get the other ingredients ready. We don't wanna let this get kind of to room temperature, because then it won't puff up in the oven. So we'll put that in there and then get started on the apples. All right, so the puff pastry is in the fridge. We're just gonna let that cool while we peel these apples. And one thing I found when peeling apples is, especially if you have to do a lot of them, there gets to be some buildup on the blade. If you have hot water and can just kind of rinse it through there, you'll notice that it cuts right through. I do it if you are doing like fresh Parmesan, which I'll do later in another video, or I guess maybe this will be all one video, but that's neither here nor there. All right, so let's get a little stuck there. All right, so now we're gonna wanna cut the apples. We're gonna go kind of into the core. Obviously you don't want the core. Just kind of cut around the core, if you will. And from here, just place them face side down. And then you're just gonna kind of do little strips. So half moon's kind of like just an easy way to remember that. This one didn't get cut all the way. The good thing about this is, and you can cut them thin, cut them thick, but this is gonna be in the oven for 40 minutes. So the thinner they are, the faster they're gonna cook. And so you just wanna be aware of that. Okay, so we're just gonna cut these. I'm gonna stop talking. If you get any bad coloring, just kind of trim it off. Also, if you have to cut these ahead of time, if you put a little bit of lemon juice on the apples, they won't brown as quickly, and you get a little bit of lemon flavor. All right, so we've got it out of the fridge, the puff pastry, and what you're gonna wanna do, keep your knife around, but we're just gonna kind of layer these apples kind of on the top there. You'll realize as you go along kind of what might be too big for the shape of kind of your tart. But like I said, if it's rustic, it just kind of means it's not super, super perfect. So I'm just going to kind of maybe do a little diagonal, because that's always my excuse for anytime I can't get something perfectly straight. I'm just like, well, I'm just going to do it on a diagonal, and everyone won't be able to tell. All right, so kind of putting that down there at the end, kind of scoot up a little bit, and then just kind of fill in how you see fit. You can do different designs. It's really cool. So I'm going to just kind of fill this up as we go. And so right now you see that this isn't perfect, but we're just going to fill in some gaps with just apple slices here and there. All right, so now my little mismatched design is done. I'm going to sprinkle this with sugar. I've got about a half a cup, but depending on your taste, you don't have to add that much, but these are Granny Smith apples that I used, so they're going to be pretty tart. And then what we're going to do to finish them is put some apricot glaze on there, just apricot jam, store-bought, and you can put a little bit of water in there, and then just kind of brush it over the top, and it kind of gives it that really shiny coating. But just making sure you're getting all these covered. I feel like half a cup is excessive, so, you know, just kind of going with what looks good with my eyeballs. All right, and I've also got 4 tablespoons of butter, which it's cold butter, obviously. And we're just gonna, I cut it into little bitty cubes. So these are just gonna kind of sit in the little pockets on the actual apples. And then here we're just gonna put them kind of in the middle. That way that crust gets really buttery, and it just helps with the kind of puffed golden crispy vibe you're going for. This is kind of melting in my hands as we do this, so no harm, no foul. And I guess my last piece didn't really cut through, so just kind of breaking it off with my bare hands. Very slippery. Okay, so this looks good. We're gonna put this in the oven for about 45 minutes. I've got it already preheating to 400, and then after 45 minutes, brush it with the glaze, and then that's your French apple tart. Or I guess easy apple tart. All right, so it's about time for the apple tart to be finished. I'm just taking some store-bought apricot preserves and putting them in a little saucepan here. I've got the heat on low, and I'm probably going to use about 1/3 of the apricot jam. I may not even use that, but you know, some people might get crazy and try and use the whole thing. But we're just going to be covering the apples, kind of giving it like a nice glossy veneer. So that'll be exciting. I'm going to mix a little bit of water and maybe add a little bit more here after looking at the bottom of the pan. So like I said, low heat. Don't tell anyone. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of water. When in doubt, use a sippy cup. So that's probably a couple tablespoons of water. And if you feel like the consistency is way too thin, add more preserves. If you feel like it's too thick, add more water. So we're just kind of incorporating this. It's kind of thin right now, but once it starts to bubble up, we'll get a better idea of what the consistency is going to end up being. And I've got 1 minute on the tart. So these are very exciting times. I'm trying to heat up just a little bit. So about medium heat. And because they're preserves, they've got kind of that lumpy natural apricots in it. It's fine. It just sits on the apples. So, all right. this is looking great. Now we're gonna pull it out of the oven. All right, it's time. Ta-da! So don't worry, you've got kind of some of that sugar on the side that's burnt a little bit, but otherwise this looks like a nice little rustic apple tart. So I'm just gonna get my brush, kind of swirl around in there. Like I said, the consistency, we're just gonna be kind of lightly, this is still hot. The tart obviously just came out of the oven. So kind of even just caressing the apples ever so slightly. And like I said, they're gonna kind of move around because I've got some pieces that, I'm gonna definitely do the crust here. But I've got some pieces that are, those uneven little spaces that I wanted to add, texture, not texture, but just kind of fill those voids. So some of those are gonna be just kind of almost disintegrating, but the apple flavor will still be there. And like I said, it won't look like a puzzle with some missing pieces. Okay, just make sure everyone gets some love on here. Forgot to turn the heat off, that's important. Okay, I always feel like I could be doing one more coat. That's that pan still sizzling, bubbling hot. Oops. So with all these recipes, it's kind of, like I said, at your discretion. You don't like apricots, use a lemon preserve, I don't care. And then use as much as you like. If you want a ton on there, use a ton. The world is your oyster, or your apple tart. Okay, I think we're done. So if you just want to get a little sneak peek at that, that is a easy French tart.